I made a video a little over a year ago, I think, asking the exact same question that I'm about to ask again. The difference is today we have a little bit more, maybe a lot more data to help give us an educated guess or help us make an educated guess. So the question was, if The Last of Us Part 2 didn't sell to Sony's expectations, and we know it's a phenomenal game, you can hate the story or whatever, but you can't hate the quality of the title. And I love Last of Us Part 2 more than the first one, so I'm not hating on the game. But it obviously was divisive. And it got a lot of flack I don't think was earned. Some of it was earned if you really have a problem with the Joel story and all that. But the kind of social justice warrior stuff, it's like, you know, I just don't believe that game was shoving anyone's agenda anywhere. It was just telling stories about people, and some of them happen to be, whatever. It's not the point. The point is, here's this game that comes out, one of the best reviewed games of all time. And we found out recently that after a 2-year selling period, the title had done, 10 million. Neil Druckmann on the Keeley show said a little over 10 million or over 10 million. You don't say, if you can say 11 million, you say 11 million. It's somewhere between 10 and 11. I think that's fair to say based on what he said. And that seemed to me kind of low and kind of like, I don't imagine Sony would be too thrilled with that. And then yesterday, Sucker Punch came out and said that after 2 years on the market, they had their 2-year anniversary. They were only released a month apart from each other in 2020. They said that Ghost has sold 10 million, give or take, about 10 million copies, right? So let's just say they're within 1 million sales of each other. You have a brand new intellectual property. It sold, 10 million's a great amount. It's not Spider-Man amount, but it's a great amount, especially for a brand new IP. And I don't know this for a fact, but it would seem easy money to bet that Sucker Punch is making a sequel to this game and putting it on PS5. And I imagine, and this may be wrong, I imagine these guys are going to get the same, not that you ever get carte blanche from Sony, but you're going to get the freedom to keep going because clearly what you're doing seems to be working. But then when you look at the sequel to The Last of Us, which did not sell near as well as the original Last of Us and I know it's been out longer and it's been on different systems, but if you're comparing a brand new intellectual property to a follow-up on PlayStation 4 primarily when it came out, that really was the sequel to one of the most beloved games of all time, and they're both coming in at 10 million, I have to assume Sony looks at this and says Last of Us 2, in terms of sales, in terms of consumer response, was a disappointment. And then the other data that came out today is that we see Horizon Forbidden West, which, again, I need to go back and play when I finish Elden Ring, which I still haven't. But clearly it's got legs. It's currently sitting at the number 4 position of all the games sold in 2022. And it just came out a couple of months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, February, I think. And we don't really know what these numbers are, right? You can kind of guess maybe what this means. Like, the full year of 2022, The Last of Us Part 2 was like the number 6 selling game in 2020. Sorry. But it's not apples to apples. It's very hard. You can jump through a bunch of math hoops and go, you think you know what the number is. But the point is, it looks like if you're to take nothing else other than the fact that in 2022, we're halfway through the year, Horizon is already sitting at number 4. And at the end of the year in 2020, The Last of Us couldn't crack the top 5. Now, that doesn't mean that, Horizon Forbidden West is on a trajectory to sell a lot more, but I think it's not a bad extrapolation of the very little data we have to say that here's what we know. Horizon Forbidden West seems to be selling better. Ghost Tsushima may not be selling exactly as much, but it was brand new when it released. No one knew what the fuck it was. And the sequel is a sequel to a beloved game. So in a brilliant selling game. And I bring this up not to beat up on The Last of Us 2. I bring it up because it represents sort of if these assessments are correct, if Sony's not going, no, dude, we're thrilled. I don't mean PR wise, but if they're not internally going, we're thrilled with the sales. Are you kidding? Assuming they're not doing that, which I don't think from this data they are, it represents a fascinating conundrum, right? And it's the same thing we talked about a little over a year ago, but now we have even more data to suggest, is this something where the powers that be at Sony have to go to Naughty Dog, not like with factions or whatever they're calling it, but if they were to make a Last of Us Part 3, do they go to Naughty Dog and say, guys, we love your politics. Like, I love Naughty Dog's politics. I'm super fucking progressive, as you know. I think it was great. I loved it. I need to finish it, but I loved it. But do they go to them and say, but the fact of the matter is, we're, being that fast, pushing your views of what you want to be normalized, even though, yes, it's normal as humans go. But in terms of, if you take into account at least the United States media and what people are, quote, ready for in terms of representation in games and movies and things, they might be saying, look, I know you want to make exactly what you want. You've earned the right. But the fact of the matter is, if you make The Last of Us Part 3 and you make it just as liberal, just as progressive, just as divisive as the folks in Pakistan say, as the Last of Us game, we can't sustain that. We've got to either lower the budget meaningfully, and then you guys make whatever the fuck you want because you're some of the best game makers, at least narrative-based game makers on the planet, or you're going to have to kind of bring it in a little bit, a meaningful amount, so that, yes, it still has your messaging, yes, it still has your values and what you want to express through the art, but it's also good business that is not going to push away customers that find those politics, or not even politics, but find those perspectives of the world and what should be normalized problematic, as much as I think those people are idiots. And that, to me, that's fascinating. It's like, because it would be the first time that really you would have Sony coming to their developers. There have been cases that you've never heard of, but in terms of a very public case where clearly the monetization is stronger, or the ability to make money on their games is stronger than the artistic vision that they rightly so trumpet all the time. And I'm absolutely fascinated if they do make a Last of Us 3, are they going to be, are we going to get that deep in the weeds with lesbian characters and trans characters and Jewish characters? I mean, anything that deviates from, white, cisgendered, straight people tends to peel off a percentage of the audience, which I find incredibly sad and unfortunate. But you can't argue with the numbers. So I am fascinated. I don't have an answer to this. I mean, if I was I would never be in Jim Ryan's position because I don't have the discipline for it. I'd say, fuck it. No, go with your vision. Let the chips fall where they may. If we go out of business, we go out of business. But we're going to make the shit we want to make. That's a terrible way to run a business. And that's not how Jim Ryan does it. So my guess is if they make a Last of Us Part 3, it's going to be dialed back, or the budget's going to be dialed back, and they're going to have the freedom to run wild. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, fellas and Filettis, about what the next, what's the responsible thing to do with The Last of Us 3?